Good evening. This regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of Socorro ISD will be held March 24th, 2020. The time is 6 p.m. This meeting will be held by teleconference. The teleconference audio can be accessed at the following toll-free number: 1-866-99-4679 using the access code 684-973-173. Any member of the public wishing to comment on an agenda item can send the comments to the following email address at boardquestions@sisd.net. All backup and materials for the meeting can be accessed. At this time, I have a script to read for our instructions. On March 16th, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic or video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus COVID-19. In accordance with those suspended rules, we certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. Number one, although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by telephone call and internet access. Number two, we are meeting by use of both telephone conference call, online access, and through use of an email link for questions. If a member of the public submitted written comments in advance, we will read those. A member of administration will read the comments into record before or during the board's consideration of that item. If you would like to provide comment at a future meeting conducted by video conference or telephone call, please follow instructions on the meeting notice. Number four, all other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. Number five, an audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. Number six, we apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented conditions. And number seven, if you have any questions about these suspended laws, please call the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787 or by email at toma@oag.texas.gov. And now I'll take a roll call of board members and Dr. Espinosa. Ms. Rodriguez?
I am here, ready to go.
Mr. Guetta?
Present.
Mr. Gondeta?
I'm here.
Mr. Garcia?
Here.
Mr. Mena?
I'm here.
Mr. Morales? Mr. Morales hear us? Okay, as we do have a quorum of board members present, and Dr. Espinosa, you're here as well, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The subjects to be discussed or considered upon which maybe formal action may be taken are listed below. Items do not have to be taken in the order shown on this meeting notice. All items on the consent agenda shall be acted upon by one vote without separate discussion, unless a board member requests that an item be withdrawn for individual consideration. Board members, in order for our audio recording to be clear, we're going to have to do things a little differently tonight. If you have a question about an agenda item, please state your name and wait to be acknowledged before asking your question. Also, when making a motion or a second, please state your name first. When I ask for the vote, I will do a roll call of each board member's vote. So now that we have that out of the way, we're going to get started. And if you'll all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we will continue with item number 3, superintendent's comments. Dr. Espinosa.
Thank you, President Nájera. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm sending prayers and positive vibes to all of our community. I hope all of you are safe and healthy. You know, our current state of affairs continues to evolve day by day, hour by hour. And as all of y'all may know, we had a shelter-in-place order issued by the city and the county earlier today. And our district leaders and I had already anticipated that this action by the mayor and judge would be inevitable, since we were constantly researching what was happening around the country and globe. And as I stated in my March 20th video update to our community, I'm super impressed by the outstanding efforts of our school district, of Team SISD. And I need to give credit. Let me tell you where credit is due. We were the only district in the region to extend spring break till April 6th, which was a harder decision for us to make since our students had already been home for 1 week, but we didn't let that stop us. So like I said, we were constantly researching and we knew the situation was only going to get worse very quickly. And so the day after we made our decision, the city of public health department mandated that all districts close till April 6th. And on March 15th, our district leaders and I, we went beyond the guidance of the city of public health department, and we made that critical decision to conduct an emergency shutdown of our school district until further notice, in order to make social distancing possible for our students, our employees, and families. And today, as I mentioned, Mayor D. Margo and the El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego, they now ordered basically an emergency shutdown of our city and county until further notice. So, you know, the team's foresight, the team's intelligence, the heart and fierce sense of urgency of our district leadership team, you know, to protect our students, staff, and families is simply remarkable. You know, so again, I got to thank some people. I know these are little lengthy superintendent comments, but I think they're important since what's happening right now. So to number one, to our cabinet team, you know, let me just say that I go to battle with you guys every day of the weekend, twice on Sunday. Thank you so much, cabinet, for everything that you do. Our team can't be successful without the support of our awesome board of trustees. So I want to thank them again for approving our recommendation to allow us to pay the employees during the district closure. This virtual board meeting that we're having right now couldn't be possible without Mr. Hector Reyna and his technology team, you know, so thank you. And again, words alone cannot describe my gratitude towards our CNS department, our finance, our police teams who are fed and our employees are paid and the community is safe. I made my rounds this morning going from different schools, CNS, and they were out there handing out the meals, the breakfast and the lunches. And it was truly remarkable, a remarkable sight to see. And I used to call SISD teachers our heroes in the classrooms. Now our teachers are our heroes at home. I can't thank our top-notch teachers, our support staff, campus administrators enough for delivering outstanding remote learning opportunities for our awesome students. I also want to thank our employee associations as well for their support and reaching out to us to continue to work as a team. I could go on and on, as you can see, because the list of amazing individuals in our school district just never ends, you know, so I will be forever proud of our school district. Now, as we move forward, we'll continue to communicate via YouTube, via our website, social media accounts to provide updates on the latest developments impacting our school district. You know, the overwhelming positive response from our employees and community is heartwarming and greatly appreciated. You know, we're working hard to ensure that our families, including our homeless students, are connected academically, getting their basic needs met, and that they know that we love them and we'll never leave them behind. We miss our students, we miss our employees, we miss our parents, we miss our Team SISD celebrations, our events that we have. However, I think this situation here, team, and community has made our district stronger than ever. From day one, you know, we set out to build a family atmosphere, a team mentality, and today more than ever, I can see that we have been very successful in doing that. our team SISD here rocks. So that concludes my comments. Thank you, President Nahara.
Thank you, Dr. Espinosa. We will continue with item number 4, district reports. A, facilities report. Mr. Iington?
Good afternoon, President Nahara, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board, Tom Iington, Chief Operation Officer. The facility report is in your binder and it begins on page 8 through page 18. I will let you review that on your own. What I want to talk tonight about is I want to inform the board that the construction has been continuing. Facility and planning and purchasing is continuing to work with our contractors, issuing a notice to proceed to all of those construction companies that have been awarded contracts so that they may continue to work on our project. F&P Facility and Planning is working also with the other projects that are in the design stage and in the bidding stages with follow-up information to those architects and contractors so that we may continue to work on these projects. As far as the local emergency directive Dr. Espinosa mentioned that was issued today, I have visited with the contractors and they will continue to work under that directive since we are considered essential facilities or critical facilities and we are educational institutions. The contractors have provided me, some of them or most of them have, with their social distancing implementation along with which has been following the Department of Health recommendations as far as distance meeting and social when they're working on the job. During the district closure, we've been working within the campuses. This has given us some opportunities to work on some of our facilities, El Dorado, Montwood, to name 2 of them. There might be more without the students there. And this has helped us to continue and help the contractors. They had rental equipment already in stage at the projects and stuff. So this has enabled them to continue the work. Maintenance and operation has continued their cleaning process of the campuses. We let my colleagues working together, administration was able to come into the campuses last week to pick up any supplies, laptop, so they were able to work on remote learning, allowing the teachers to pick up supplies in their classrooms. And M&O, maintenance and operation, will continue the disinfecting of the schools beginning tomorrow on a revised schedule to be completed by the end of next week. We also, CNS, they have been working with CNS. Dr. Espinosa mentioned CNS. I want to give my appreciation to Shelley and all of her staff. Today was the first day that we served breakfasts and lunches at the campuses. I visited about 6 campuses this morning, and the service, the meal service was on day 1 was very, very good. Breakfasts were served from 8 to about 9 o'clock or till 9, and there was a little over 2,800 breakfasts served. Lunches went from 11 o'clock to 1 p.m. and there was over 8,800 lunches served, bringing the total to a little over 11,700. So that was for day 1, it was very good. We have a lot of good pictures and a lot of feedback from the parents and the students that were receiving the meals. So that will continue on as we proceed into this. The other thing is we had a refresh at Afita Chavez to install some furniture. That furniture has been sitting in the classroom, not in the classroom, the hallways, in boxes ready to be installed. And we are going to start that installation tomorrow, and it should be completed by Saturday. And then we will complete the disinfecting of Afita Chavez. We are constantly in communication with all of our vendors and keeping them up to date on everything. They have been very good. If you hadn't driven by the DSC, they have moved a lot of more people over there at the DSC to work on that building, and that is similar to all of the construction project. We are continuing that, working with them to make sure everything goes well and the social distancing is adhered by. Basically, that's all I wanted to report on, unless there are some questions.
President Nájera, this is Angelica Rodriguez. I've got a question.
Yes, Ms. Rodriguez.
Mr. Iington and Dr. Espinosa, with regard to the breakfasts and the lunches that are being given to kids. Now, I know we talked about this on, I want to say Monday, I believe, at our last meeting. And just for the record, now the students don't have to go to the campus that they're enrolled in. They can go to any campus in the district, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, with regard to the breakfast, breakfast is being passed out from 8 to 9. Did we take, and I know today was the first day, so I know, you know, with everything that's going on, you know, we're going to have more and more students, I believe, coming in. But, you know, maybe you, Mr. Iington, or Ms. Shanowski can address this or can answer this question for me. But in looking at kind of the waves of students that were coming in, especially for breakfast, it is early and that kind of thing. Did we notice that right when we started serving, we had, you know, students coming in, or was it closer to the tail end of the window? Do you all have any information as far as, like, you know, what that possibly looked at? And I know Dr. Espinosa shared the information with regard to how many meals that we passed out. You know, in looking at those numbers, I just want to see, like, were there certain areas that were a little more busy than others? Was it earlier in the morning versus towards the end of the serving period? Can you shed some information on that?
Yes, I was there early, and there was no people in lines, and then I made my rounds, and one in particular at East Lake, there was a couple of people going through it when I was there. More so at Mission Ridge, I was there, and there was 3 or 4 cars in line with multiple kids in each of those cars. Shelley just texted me. There were some lines in some of the campuses that she was at, and it varied campus by campus. I do have the breakout per campus of both breakfasts and lunches from day one. And, you know, we are going to keep a track of that, you know, each day. And, you know, similar to what we did or what we do during our summer meal service. And then we will analyze the sites if we think that the numbers are low, if there's somehow we can combine those. But it varies at each site. We are going to continue to monitor and look at it. But overall, I thought it went well.
Yeah, based on the numbers that we received, Mr. Iington, you know, again, thank you. And, you know, Ms. Shanowski, thank you so much for you and your staff for being able to provide the meals for our students and in our district. Thank you all so much. The reason I was asking is just, again, so we can look at that information and be able to make adjustments if we need it. Do we need to extend the time a little bit if we had more kids coming towards the end of the breakfast, the breakfast window? I know you all are looking at that. So I appreciate all the work that you and your team is doing. Thank you again so very much.
Thank you. And currently we are following the application and those are the time slots. Now, if we change the application, we can also at that point in time change the time slot too, to extend it or shorten it or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Huntington.
Thank you.
At this time, do we have any public questions that have been sent in to the email address?
President Nahida, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board, this is Maribel Macias, Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services. 2 questions have been submitted. The first question was submitted today at 3:23 p.m. and it reads, "To whom it may concern, as a concerned parent and community member, I would like to know why the district is not closing operations as per state and county regulations. The district is abusing the essential personnel clause to bring in entire departments and staff to handle menial work that is not required during the shutdown. The district is placing numerous amounts of staff, families, and community members at risk with their careless decision-making. Please reconsider the district's role in spreading the virus and allow the facilities to remain shut while this crisis passes. A concerned parent, Yasmin Contreras." The second email was received today at 5:31 p.m. The second statement reads, "Good evening. I have a big concern about the way a certain member of the special education department conducts themselves with parents in an annual review and dismissal, ARD meeting. 1. Acknowledge every individual in the ARD meeting, which are SISD employees and not the parents. This already demonstrates lack of leadership, professionalism, poor representation of the district. 2. While trying to conduct the ARD meeting, become verbally abusive and hostile in his tone, facial expressions, hand gestures. As someone who has worked, As someone who has worked in law enforcement, this would demonstrate as an individual who is displaying aggressive, threatening behavior, example of clenching a fist, reposturing, and placing fingers inside the collar and neck as to get ready to fight, watching the grinding of teeth, popping neck as to get ready for a fight. This individual displayed this to my wife and I, which is to be very blunt, I was ready to defend my wife and myself from this individual. I guess that this is how SISD conducts themselves by trying to intimidate parents by force or displaying the potential use of force. I am not intimidated one bit by anyone, nor will I allow an individual to get away with that type of behavior. That is why I have gone through the proper channels. If this means no one wants to say or take action by the proper channels, then so be it, even if it means to stand alone. I understand right now there are difficult times. I have compassion and understanding. This would have never gone this far if my request for remedies from the first time would have been met, which I know were more than fair and reasonable requests. I pray and hope you will take the proper action. Thank you." Those are the two statements submitted.
Thank you, Ms. Macias. Item number 5, consent agenda. Are there any items to be pulled?
President Nahara, this is Mr. Guerra.
Yes, sir, Mr. Guetta.
I would like to pull items E2 and 3D. I'm sorry, E2A and 3D.
Thank you, Mr. Guerra. Any others?
President Nájera, this is Angelica Rodriguez. I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items with the exception of E2A and E3D.
President Nájera, I have one.
That one to be pulled, Mr. Mena?
Yes, can you pull consent agenda E3? A, please.
Okay, Ms. Rodriguez, would you like to restate your motion?
President Nájera, I would, again, for the record, this is Angelica Rodriguez, and I would like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of E2A, E3A, and E3D.
This is Mr. Guerra, and I'd like to second the motion.
I have a motion by Ms. Rodriguez and a second by Mr. Guerra. Is there any further items to be pulled? And I will call for a vote. Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion passes. We will take the first pulled item of E2A.
Yes, President Nájera, this is Mr. Guerra. I have a question, and this will go to Chief Castorena. Chief, can you briefly explain about the emergency response team in regards with the helping of the city of Socorro Police?
Yes. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Espinosa. So this MOU was something that we had been discussing just shortly before we started our action plan down in Socorro, at Socorro High School, to review metal detectors and whatnot. And with this happening, the conversation stemmed to including the city of Horizon and developing a special response team, if you will. This way, because we're all pretty much in the same community, we have a team that can train regularly and respond to an incident that may be, active shooter oriented or something along that level. We hope we never have to use it, but it's an awesome opportunity for us to be able to be more prepared in the event that we need it.
President Nájera, this is Mr. Guerra. I wanted to pull that on because I think it was great that Chief Castorena brought that to the forefront because of what happened locally, or what happened a couple of months ago with the city of Socorro. And now we're working like an interlocal agreement. And he did tell me also, we're also working, I believe, with the city of Horizon also as well. So it's good that both cities, along with SISD, is working together. So thank you, Chief Castorena.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. Again, this is just an effort to try to improve on what we've been working on for a while now with regard to the interoperability with our other agencies here locally. And we hope to expand later on into the sheriff's office and the El Paso Police Department for other schools, and not just those communities, but out in the east side of El Paso as well.
President, this is Mr. Guerra. I'd like to have a motion to approve.
This is Angelica Rodriguez. I second that motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Guerra and a second by Ms. Rodriguez. Is there any further discussion? At this time, I will call for a vote. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion carries. The next item to be considered is E3A. Mr. Mena?
Yes, thank you. This is Mr. Mena. The reason why I wanted to ask a couple questions on this, I thought we were getting 20 buses, not 10. Now, as I'm reading a little bit, these are the handicap buses, right?
Yes, Mr. Mena, this is Tony Dessa, Chief Financial Officer. You're correct. Our intention is to order 20 buses for the next school year. However, with respect to the special education buses, there's a pretty significant lead time associated with receiving those buses, usually 4 to 6 months. So in talking to Mr. Mesa, he did request if we could take this to the board early this year with the understanding that we'll probably receive them around July at best, probably August. So you're correct. We're gonna put in our budget the purchase of 20 school buses, 10 special ed, 10 traditional regular buses. However, we're asking the board's approval to order these buses now so we could receive them in time for the start of the fiscal year, new school year.
Tony, and the reason why we're doing this early is due to the fact that they have to equip these buses with special needs equipment.
My understanding is that it's not only that, they just they build them once they get the order and it takes that long. So you're probably correct. It's probably the special equipment that's needed, the lift, the chairs, and everything else that's associated with a special education bus.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Questions?
No
concerns.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mena, I will second that motion.
This is Mr. Guerra. I'll second the motion.
Okay, I'll motion to approve the 10 buses. There's Mr. Mena.
I have a motion by Mr. Mena and a second by Mr. Guerra. Is there any further discussion? I will call for a vote. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion carries. And the final consent agenda item is item 3D about the hotspots. Mr. Guerra?
Yes, thank you, President Nara. Had a question, and Mr. Garcia, I called them earlier in regards to the hotspots. We're looking at they were looking for 1,000 hotspots for 3 months. Mr. Garcia, please.
President Nájera, Superintendent Dr. Espinosa, and members of the board. My name is Sam Garcia, Director of Purchasing. So we received an update today in regards to the acquisition and services for the 1,000 mobile hotspots through T-Mobile. And we initially had requested a 3-month service at $144,000. We have received an update that they are able to provide under a 2-year program at a value of $172,000. And so we would like to present this for board's consideration if the board would like to move in rewording this agenda item from 3 months to 24 months for a total cost of $172,000 for the 2 years. And we will continue, we will keep the 1,000 mobile hotspots and also the 24-month service.
President Nara.
Yes, sir. Mr. Guerra?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to make a motion on item 3D and extend it from 3 months to 24 months to 2 years for $172,000 which will be a savings for Team SISD.
Ms. Nájera, this is Gary Gandara.
Mr.
I second the motion. I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Ganada. I have a motion by Mr. Gata and a second by Mr. Ganada. Is there any further discussion?
Mrs. Nájera, this is Gary Gandara.
Here.
One quick question. When will these mobile hotspots get in?
This is Hector Arena, Mr. Gandara. The hotspot will come in 2 weeks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? At this time, I will call for a vote. Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
Mr. Gata,
Aye.
Mr. Ganada,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia,
Aye.
Mr. Mena,
Aye.
and Mr. Morales.
Aye.
And the motion carries. We will continue with item number 6, new business. A, consider approval of Public Safety Telecommunications Week proclamation. Ms. Macias? Can Ms. Macias hear us, or can someone else speak to this item?
Miss Macias got disconnected and I'm trying to log her back in. I'm sorry, this is Mary Ann Pais with Instructional Technology.
President Nájera, could we come back to that one after she comes? Can we go to the next one? Is that, and then come back to that one?
Yes, sir, that's fine. We'll go ahead and move on. Actually, item 6B is also Ms. Macias. So we will continue with 6C, which is consider approval of order authorizing the issuance of Socorro Independent School District Unlimited Tax School Refunding Bonds, Series 2020. Mr. Reza.
Yes, good afternoon, President Nájera, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. I'm Tony Ressa, Chief Financial Officer. Tonight, we are requesting your approval to refund $174 million of existing bonds for the purpose of generating savings by reducing our future debt service expenditures. With us to present this item is Mr. Jeff Robert from Hilltop Securities, the district's financial advisor. The presentation that Mr. Robert will be discussing is found on page 135 of your board book. Mr. Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Ressa, Board President Nájera, Superintendent Espinosa, and board members Jeff Roberts with Hilltop Securities. I hope everyone is safe and healthy. If you'll turn to, let's go ahead and flip to 137 in your board book, and I'll start with a lengthy disclaimer, and these are obviously unprecedented times that we're in. Despite low U.S. Treasury rates, the completion of municipal transactions right now is extremely difficult. This past week, there were 230 transactions scheduled to, or excuse me, this current week, 230 transactions scheduled to price, and I believe 210 of them are now considered day-to-day because they were pulled, and the others, there's high potential for that as well. What we're asking for your approval on tonight is a parameter refunding order that would put us into a position to quickly respond if the markets were to settle down. Prior to this taking place, interest rates were at favorable levels, and I think once, hopefully at some point when we do come out of this, that they'll be at favorable levels again, and this would allow us to hopefully be able to execute a refunding or refundings on behalf of the district and save the taxpayer substantial debt service dollars. The worst case scenario on this is that we can't execute any of the refundings that are shown in this presentation and nothing changes. So your debt service would remain exactly the same in the worst case scenario. If you'll turn the page, and I apologize, I have two page twos here, but it's 138 in your board book. What this is just meant to show is that we really are at historically low levels with regard to tax exempt rates up at the top and taxable rates at the bottom. And I'll go into the difference or the reasons for taxable interest rates and tax exempt rates for these different refundings. But just a few weeks ago, those tax exempt rates up at the top were at the very bottom of those bars that you see there, and the taxable rates you can see are still at very low levels. But it is very volatile, and they're moving around quite a bit every day. The next page shows the total amounts and issues that we would be looking at the potential for refunding. I've color coded these because we can't execute these as one single refunding, and there's a couple of reasons. One, the green shaded area there, we're able to do on a tax exempt basis because we're going to be within 90 days of the August 15th, 2020 call date. The other reason why I've color coded these is because some of them are receiving IFA and some of them are receiving EDA funding, existing debt allotment funding, and instructional facilities allotment funding. Anytime we refund or refinance an instructional facilities allotment issue, we need to do that on a standalone basis so that the TEA can track the debt service on that issue and continue to allow it to receive IFA funding. The EDA funding is a little simpler in terms of we can combine those. So if you match the colors there, the two blues or light blue, so there we could do combined. The others would all be standalone. The other thing I'd mentioned was tax exempt and taxable rates. The issuance on the left, the 2011 issue, could be refunded using tax exempt rates. Because of tax reform that went into effect in early 2018, we would only be able to do taxable refundings of those other issues. However, as you saw on that prior page, taxable interest rates or treasury rates are at historically low levels, and we can still save substantial dollars by doing taxable interest rate refundings of tax exempt transactions. The next few pages, what I've done, since we are in such volatile times, and these numbers are changing wildly, and I know there's a lot of numbers on your screen there, but if on page 140 of your board packet, this would be the largest potential taxable refunding of the series 2013 issue on the prior page. And what I'm showing here is the absolute minimum level of savings that Dr. Espinosa or Mr. Ressa could approve on behalf of the district if this order is approved by the board. This is the minimum level of savings that we would get if we were to execute this transaction. It can't be any lower than this. On the next page, it's the same thing for the two issuances that are receiving EDA funding. The minimum level of savings that can be approved is shown in column 7. So in column 7 on the prior page, 6.2 million would be the minimum level that we could approve of savings. Column 7 on page 141 would be 2.27 million that you see in the green shaded area. The same for the third potential refunding, $1.5 million would be, and this is a much smaller refunding of only 12 million, so $1.5 million would be the minimum level that could be approved. And then lastly, in column 7 on 143, once again, a $27 million issuance would be 1.5 million on this one as well. And what those numbers reflect is a 5% present value savings, which is the minimum savings threshold that is in the order that Mr. Braden with Norton Rose Fulbright prepared. And then on page 9 of the presentation, or page 144 of your board book, that shows the combined minimum levels of savings that could be approved if rates are favorable to allow us to execute the refundings, which would be a total of 11.6. My hope and thoughts are is at some point we should hopefully be able to save in excess of that number, but that would be the minimum level if we were to be able to execute all four. The parameter refunding order on page 10 of the presentation, 145 of your board book. I think this is a slide that the board has seen many times. It's allowable under Texas Government Code. Delegate final pricing authority to Dr. Espinosa and Mr. Ressa. The main parameter in there is that minimum savings threshold, which is going to be that 5% present value figure that I'd mentioned. Once again, pricing officers can only approve the sale if the board parameters are met. And if for whatever reason we don't execute any transactions, nothing changes, everything stays the same. You will note that the district has used parameter authority for the last 15 plus years on all of your transactions, new money issuances and refundings. And then lastly, on page 11 or page 146 of your board book, those are the parameters that are included within the order that Mr. Braden prepared. Once again, pricing officer, superintendent, or CFO, maximum principal amount is the combined outstanding principal that we could potentially refund. We're not going to increase the principal amount. The maximum true interest cost rate of 3.5%, that minimum savings threshold figure of 5% present value. The final maturity date is August 15th of 2038. We're not going to extend the term on any of these refinancings, and this authority would be good for 364 days starting tomorrow. We just feel like this would put us in a much more proactive, flexible position with the markets being as volatile as they are, to hopefully be able to react and get a refunding transaction in if it's favorable to the district and its constituents, to save money and help with tax rate management, as well as future tax rate or INS capacity for future authorizations as well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions at this time?
May we have a motion?
No, sir, not as of yet.
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
This is Mr. Guerra, second.
I apologize, that was Gary Gonda that made the motion.
Yes, sir. I have a motion by Mr. Gondeta and a second by Mr. Getta. Is there any further discussion? I will call for the vote. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Getta?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Reza and Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
We're going to move back to item 6A, consider approval of Public Safety Telecommunications Week proclamation. And Chief Castorena?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So if you have a copy before you, ma'am, what I'd like to do is take an opportunity to present the proclamation to you. The Telecommunicators Week nationally is recognized from the 13th to the 17th of April. And the goal here is really to honor and recognize the hard work of our dispatchers locally with the school district, and all the hard work that they provide for our officers out in the field on a daily basis. They truly are an asset. They're an additional set of eyes and ears, if you will, with the technology that's available in our dispatch center, and they do a lot in the behind the scenes, and I think it's important that they be recognized.
Is Mr. Mena a motion to approve?
This is Angelica Rodriguez. I second that motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Mena and a second by Ms. Rodriguez. Is there any further discussion? I will call for a vote. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion passes. Chief Castorena, yes, I wholeheartedly agree with you that our dispatchers, our telecommunications experts go above and beyond, and they perform a very critical task to keep our law enforcement safe and informed, and very appreciative of all that they do. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We will move on to item 6B, consider approval of Month of the Military Child Proclamation. Dr. Graham.
Good evening, President Nájera, esteemed board members, and our awesome superintendent. Today we seek your approval for the following proclamation. Month of the Military Child and April 17, 2020 as Purple Up for Military Kids Day. You have the proclamation before you, but I was asked to read it for the record. So whereas Socorro Independent School District recognizes the selfless acts of service performed by its brave members of the military and their devoted families, and whereas military families continue to face that unique burden of multiple deployments, often causing unnecessary uncertainty and constant upending of their lives and routines, and whereas military families themselves know the sacrifices borne by military children, but their important contributions can often go unnoticed by the general public, and whereas Socorro Independent School District is home to more than 3,000 military children who have at least one parent serving in the military, and whereas military children are a source of pride and honor, and that we recognize the often unsung sacrifices made by them and commend them for their support and dedication to their families in service to the protection and advancement of citizens' rights and freedoms. And whereas the month of April has been celebrated as the month of the military child since 1986, recognizing the importance of military children and expressing gratitude for their sacrifice, and whereas a month-long salute to military children will encourage local communities to provide direct support to military children and families, therefore, we, Dr. Jose Espinosa, Superintendent of Socorro Independent School District, and the Board of Trustees of the Socorro Independent School District, do hereby proclaim April 2020 as Month of the Military Child and April 17, 2020 as Purple Up for Military Kids Day. In recognition of our military children, we urge all citizens to join in this special observance by wearing purple on this day, and urge all to observe Month of the Military Child by connecting with military youth, military families, and communities to provide support to all military children. So hopefully we will be back in the district to celebrate this day. Thank you.
President Nájera, this is Mr. Mena. Being a military man myself, I would love to approve this proclamation. Motion to approve.
Second, this is Gary Gondra.
I have a motion by Mr. Mena and a second by Mr. Gonda. Is there any further discussion? I will call for a vote. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gonda?
Aye.
And I believe Mr. Garcia has had to leave the meeting. Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Dr. Graham, thank you so much.
Thank you, and good job, board.
President Nájera, this is Angelica Rodriguez.
Yes, Ms. Rodriguez.
I know in this very uncharted territory, Dr. Graham said, you know, we hope we're back on this day to be able to celebrate Purple Up for military kids. May I make a suggestion, if at all possible? I know many of us are on social media, and pending our current circumstance continues on beyond or up until this day. I would love to see on social media, even if we're still working out of our homes, if we're still providing instruction out of our homes, I would love to see people post pictures of themselves wearing purple on April 17th. And I would encourage people to just post those pictures of us wearing our purple in honor of our military kids, our students who are affected by having parents in the military. I'd love to see those pictures posted on social media. So I don't know if we can, promote this even further. Again, I know it's very difficult, especially today, usually when we have our resolutions read, our proclamations read by our students themselves. I think it would be something that would encourage and be able to support this. Just a recommendation, Dr. Espinosa and Dr. Graham. Maybe we can promote this a little bit.
President Nahara?
Yes, sir, Dr. Espinosa.
Yes, Ms. Rodriguez, I agree. We'll mark that date down, and that's a great idea.
Thank you, Dr. Espinosa.
Amazing idea, Ms. Rodriguez. Thank you. We will move on to item 6D, consider approval of administrator certified and non-certified contract recommendations for the 2020-2021 school year. Mr. Campoya.
Good evening, President Nahara, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. My name is Rudy Campoya, Chief Human Resources Officer for the school district. Tonight, I'm presenting to you the list of certified and non-certified administrator contract recommendations for all district administrators that are recommended to receive their employment contract for the 2020-2021 school year. Earlier today or yesterday, you should have received the list or the contract list. The lists have been verified by the Department of Human Resources, and at this time, administration is recommending your approval of the list of employees who will receive a 2020-2021 employment contract as presented.
This is Mr. Guerra. Motion approved. I'm sorry, I would like to make a motion.
This is Mr. Mayor, I'll second that motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Guetta and an approval, but in a second by Mr. Mena. Is there any further discussion? I'll take the vote now. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Guetta?
Thank you, Ms. Nahara. Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia? Oh, I'm sorry, he has left the meeting. Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Kimpoya, thank you. Item 6E, consider approval of Park Hill Smith and Cooper to provide professional services for the Student Activities Complex 2. Mr. Ironton.
Yes, good evening, President Nahara, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. As I stated in my facility report, we are working, to continue the projects that are not on the construction, but are in the design phase. And Park Hill Smith and Cooper is working alongside HKS out of Dallas on the SAC. And since we purchased the property behind the SAC, the 60 acres, that actually is in the county. And with this proposal tonight, we would like to start preliminary platting and entitlement so that this 60 acres can become a part of the city of El Paso. This will basically clear up any potential conflicts. Let's say we had two functions going on, one in SAC 1 and one in SAC 2 when it was built, and there was an injury in one and we called 911, we wouldn't know which ESD or emergency service district to respond. We could have Horizon responding for the county, or we could have El Paso. So by platting this and presenting it as a part of the city of El Paso, it will clear up that potential confusion. It is divided up in 3 tasks, and it's listed on page 193 in your booklet. The first task is the platting and the entitlement. That's a flat fee of $14,500. The next 2 tasks, task 1 and task 2, they have provided us with a not to exceed number. And then the third, the final one would be any reimbursable expenses. And the reimbursable expenses should be minimal. But since we figured that it was over the $100,000 threshold, I wanted to bring it to the board to get approval so we can continue on with the project. I will motion to approve. Administration recommends motion to approve.
President Nahara, Mr. Mena, motion to approve.
Mr. Guerra, second.
I have a motion by Mr. Mena and a second by Mr. Guerra. Is there any further discussion? I will call for a vote. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye. Sorry.
And Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion is approved. Thank you, Mr. Ironton.
Thank you.
And item 6F, consider approval of CEA Group to provide professional services for the sports lighting at Eastlake High School and sports lighting field and modification at Pebble Hills High School. Mr. Ironton?
Yes, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. This is a continuation of our 2017 bond program. The four other high schools have their sports lighting a part of their original construction packages, and three of them have been completed. These are the two that were remaining, and CEA Group has worked with us in the past. In fact, they did the softball, baseball complex a few years ago for Paso del Norte School. We selected them off the miscellaneous professional services list. And if the board approves tonight, I will go and negotiate a fee and bring that fee proposal for board approval back at a later board meeting. So tonight would be just the approval for me to negotiate a fee with CEA Group. Administration recommends approval.
This is Mr. Guerra, motion to approve.
This is Angelica Rodriguez, second.
I have a motion by Mr. Guerra and a second by Ms. Rodriguez. Is there any further discussion?
Thank you, Mom. You don't want anything, maybe something to drink, algo?
Do what?
Mr. Your mic is on. I will call for the vote now. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Item number 7 is executive session. The meeting is to be closed for discussion with legal counsel to receive and discuss the recommendation of administration to terminate the probationary contract of AC, teacher on special assignment at the District Service Center, for good cause, and recommendation of administration to finalize termination of the term contract of RC, teacher on special assignment at the District Service Center, for good cause. To consider parent grievances filed by LNS Sander and P. Barata, to discuss personnel and real estate matters under Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, and 551.074, and 551.082. At this time, we will go to executive session. The time is 7:04.
Paul's here.
Joe's here.
Cynthia's here.
Angelica is here.
David's here.
Gary's here.
Is Mr. Getta here?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
And Mr. Mena?
It says he's arrived. Okay, I'm here, Mr. Mena.
Okay, we are back from executive session. The time is 8:15. First item of business is 8A, discussion and possible action regarding the recommendation of administration to terminate the probationary contract of AC, teacher on special assignment at the District Service Center. Mr. Blanco.
Thank you, Board President Nahara, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. This is Steve Blanco, legal counsel for the district. I gave you an overview and a summary of the investigation regarding the employee AC by his initials. He's a teacher at El Dorado High School. Based on the evidence that has been gathered by the district and during the course of the investigation, including pending investigations by CPS and other authorities, the administration is recommending that you move forward, authorize the administration to issue appropriate notice to the teacher that his probationary contract will be terminated for good cause for the reasons discussed in closed session.
This is Mr. Guerra. I would like to make a motion to approve.
Second by Gary Gandara.
I have a motion by Mr. Getta and a second by Mr. Gondeta. Is there any further discussion? I will call for a vote now. Ms. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Mr. Getta.
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta.
Aye.
Mr. Mena.
Aye.
Mr. Morales.
Aye.
And the motion carries. Item 8B, discussion and possible action regarding the recommendation of administration to finalize termination of the term contract of RC, teacher on special assignment at the District Service Center. Mr. Blanco.
Thank you, Board President Nahara. This is a follow-up from our meeting in February where you received the recommendation of administration to issue notice to the teacher that his contract was going to be terminated for good cause. That notice was sent out, issued, and received by the teacher. The time period for the teacher to file an appeal with TEA in the district has passed, and no notice of appeal regarding the proposed action to terminate the contract has been received. At this time, we're asking that the board take final action to terminate the term contract of Mr. Raul Chavita, teacher at Pebble Hills High School, for good cause, that was provided to the district at the last meeting.
This is Mr. Guerra. Motion to approve.
This is Mr. Mena, second.
I have a motion by Mr. Getta and a second by Mr. Mena. Is there any further discussion? I'll call for a vote now. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Getta?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Item 8C, discussion and possible action regarding the parent grievance of LNS Sander. Mr. Blanco?
Thank you, Board President Nahara. This is the second meeting at which the board has received information regarding this grievance. You received the package of information in the record at the meeting in February. You had from the February meeting until this meeting to review and consider it, and we discussed the status of the grievance in closed session. I do not know if the board or any of the board members have any additional questions that they feel might need to be addressed at a later meeting or at a hearing. If not, we would ask the board or a board member to make a motion to take action on the grievance. You have three options. One is to accept the recommendation of the hearing officer, Dr. Catrini, at level 3. Number 2 is to amend
the decision by Dr. Quattrini in some way to grant or deny some of the relief requested. Or number 3, to take no action. And finally, to ask for a hearing on the matter.
This is Angelica Rodriguez. I'd like to make a motion to accept Dr. Quattrini's level 3 grievance findings. At this time, the relief that is being requested by the persons is not something that the board can act on. So I would like to recommend that we accept Dr. Quattrini's level 3 grievance.
Second. Mr. Guerra?
I have a motion by Ms. Rodriguez and a second by Mr. Guerra. Is there any further discussion? And I will call for a vote. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
I abstain.
And Mr. Morales?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Item 8D, discussion and possible action regarding the current grievance of P. Barrera. Mr. Blanco?
Thank you, Board President Nahara. We discussed this matter in closed session as well regarding the grievance and the complaint filed by Mr. Barrera concerning particular interaction with himself and another district employee at a particular meeting at the district. And we received that information at the last meeting and had from that meeting until this meeting to consider and review the record and then make a determination as to whether or not, again, as with the prior one, you would affirm the decision at the prior level. Number 2, grant or deny some of the relief that was requested. Number 3, ask that additional evidence be presented at a later date in another hearing. Or 4, take no action on the grievance, which would leave the decision at the prior level in place. At this time, we would entertain a motion. If there is no motion, Board President Nahara, you can ask if anybody wants to make a motion, and if no motion is made, then the matter will be resolved with the decision at the prior level at level 3.
Hey, do we have a motion? In this motion, this item is resolved by the action of the hearing officer, Mr. Quattrini.
Correct.
Okay, if there is no further business before this board, we are adjourned. The time is 8:22. Thank you all so much for joining us.